Good evening. Welcome to Talking Pop Culture with Jake D. We are continuing the channel's coverage of CBS All Access's new limited run series, The Stand. Thus far, we're now into episode 6 of the 9-episode run that we're going to get. And you'd expect that a lot of action was going to pick up and we'd really start getting into exactly kind of the main points of the plot. And I suppose you do to an extent. And this show, the whole season and the entire run has been disappointing for a variety of reasons, one way for another. And I'm going to start off with rolling out. I'm giving this one a 5 out of 10. And I think it's a week 5 from this week's episode. I have really tried to give this show a chance, and every opportunity that I feel like I'm given to the producers and the directors and the showrunner, they just seem to squander it at every moment that they've got. The one single major shining light in this show continues to be Owen Teague playing Harold, and everything else other than Harold just feels handled so poorly throughout that honestly, it's difficult to continue watching this show. We've got, again, your two major locations, Flag's New Vegas and Mother Abigail's Boulder. The storyline that we follow in Boulder opens up with Stu organizing hunting parties, trying to find Mother Abigail, whom, unless you're a big book fan, you don't really understand why she took off into the wilderness. And in the book, when we were dealing with Mother Abigail's absence and when she left Boulder, ultimately she went out and had something of a religious experience out in the wilderness, of course. And this is a 108-year-old woman who obviously is not particularly rugged anymore, which you're not going to be when you're that extreme age. Whoopi, of course, does not look old enough to play the part, despite the fact they've referenced that she is indeed supposed to be 108 years old. And from the book point of view, she went out into the wilderness, and it was intended to be, 40 days, 40 nights, like Moses up on the mountaintop when he received the commandments. And we don't get the sense of that and the religious connotation of Abigail wandering out into the wilderness to reconnect with her God. And in the book, of course, Abigail is this incredibly sympathetic character, and she realizes that she had committed the sin of great pride in the book. And what we get from Abigail's wanderings in the show doesn't even really touch on the important religious aspects of her going off on walkabout, so to speak, that was really important to that story in the novel. She's just kind of out there for some reason, and she has an experience where she sees Flag, and they banter back and forth at one another, and he tries to offer her a way out, and she tells him off, and then they finally locate her. And the episode is titled The Vigil because they're holding a vigil at Mother Abigail's house, which was true to the novel storyline in the sense that happened. Certainly not what we saw in tonight's episode whatsoever. And Harold executes his plan to blow up the committee. They do stick true to the book storyline in the sense that Harold triggers the bomb with his walkie-talkie saying, hey, this is Harold Emery Lauder, and I do this of my own free will. In the novel, the action of even just transmitting that through the walkie is what sets the bomb off. And we get that line here in the show, but they trigger the bomb in another way by sending a second or a third transmission when him and Nadine hit the button together, which was really weird and a strange change. And they completely cut out the fact that Nick actually had a vision of the bomb and where it was inside a house for the committee meeting. And instead, it was just sitting inside the piano at Mother Abigail's house, intended to take out, dozens or hundreds of people at the vigil during her disappearance, which was, again, a twisting of what went down that I'm not even sure why they changed it the way that they did. I think you could have done all those components of the story within the time allotted without having to just collapse those two different storylines together into the one that we saw in tonight's episode. And so it really fell very flat for me. Franny did break into Harold's house and get trapped down there when she discovered the bomb and all that. And, there's a scene where she's running up trying to save her lover, Stu. And it just, as with every scene that Franny has in this show, it just felt god-awfully flat. I don't know what it is about this actress's performance, but it's just, among all the main characters in this show, it's by far the worst. And I don't know if it's just a horrible miscasting, if she's a poor actress, or what the issue is, but Franny the performance is awful. And there's nothing about any scene that she's in that really connects you to her. And Mother Abigail's wandering around doesn't hit for the viewer like it ought to, because the viewer doesn't understand who Mother Abigail is or what her role truly is because of all the mistakes that they've made in the previous episodes. So her wandering, you don't understand why she's so important to Boulder. And so the entire Boulder storyline in this episode was just absolutely flat. Yeah, I am going to move into the Vegas piece of the storyline here shortly, Colin. And I got to say, it not horribly unexpected, because, Ezra is such a... I don't even know that he was all acting all that much, because that dude is weird in real life. He's a crazy son of a bitch just outside of things. So I think he just kind of took his own normal attitude and just put it over the top a little bit. But yes, we did get a lot more story, I think, from the New Vegas storyline. And the episode opened up with the introduction of the Trashcan Man. And for those of you who maybe didn't recognize him, because they did have the burns that he had on him from all the fires that he'd been setting across the country, this was the same actor who played the Flash in the DC movies with the Batman v Superman and the Justice League and all that. So this is Ezra, I believe it's Ezra Miller, and he's yes, definitely very over the top in the portrayal. Although that one, unlike the crazy Ruby Rod that we're getting out of Lloyd Heinried, was, I thought, a bit closer to the character from the novel. Because, let's face it, Trashy, especially once he got to Vegas, that dude was crazier than batshit. And the get up that he had on, it, in fairness, it's been a while since I've read the novel, but that felt a little out there. I'm not sure that was particularly true to the character either. We do have a lot of great commenters on these videos, and I'm sure that Jim Bob Jones will correct me if I am mistaken on whether that was kind of a true attire for what we remember from Trashcan Man from the novel. Geek Tropology, good to see you here. And of course, my constant and consistent wrench, just another red shirt. Good to see all of you guys here. Honestly, Trashy was my least, the thing that bothered me the least about the New Vegas storyline. We've got the end of the previous episode. We saw the death of Dana Jurgens at her own hand, and then Flag just kind of, unlike the sheer rage that he exhibited in the novel. So the stand is having problems standing by itself. Yeah, it's falling down. Honestly, it's not standing at all on its own, man. If I hadn't read the novel 2 or 3 times when I was a younger man, plus watched the '94 miniseries, I would barely know what the fuck is going on in this show. And that's a really, really major failing. The more I think about what we're seeing in Flag's New Vegas in this show, the more I've decided that I don't like the portrayal. We are seeing just sort of a hedonistic paradise almost. Yeah, falling down was definitely better. Yeah. Yeah, no, that was definitely a very, very decent movie. There's a blue pill for that. Yeah. The producers of this show definitely could use that little blue pill, a whole stack of them. So Flag's New Vegas is this hedonistic paradise. They're drinking, they're doing drugs, they're screwing each other on the casino floor, and it's all of the excesses of life, which is a very stark contrast to the New Vegas that was portrayed to us in the books. For one thing, Flag in the novel was crucifying drug addicts. Anybody who was doing drugs, he killed their asses in the novel. And yet we've got drugs galore in the New Vegas here in the show. And one of the things I remember, which was a very, very cool scene from the novel, was there was a conversation between, I think it was just Glenn and Stu, although I could be mistaken, and maybe it was the entire committee. But Glenn, who's the sociologist, was talking about how he believed that a lot of the engineers and the tech type people were going to end up in Vegas because Flag was running such a tight ship over there. He already had the lights back on. He had people. How can Hollywood fail at adapting a product of cocaine? Well, because they wanted to put cocaine into the show. That was one of their big failings. And the conversation between Glenn and Stu, where he talked about how all the tech people were going to go to Vegas because Flag was running a tight ship. He was an effective administrator, and he was making sure, using the old cliche that the trains ran on time. And because they were talking about sort of the deficit of the types of people that were going to wind up in both communities. And that is so starkly contrasted from the New Vegas that we see in this show, as the New Vegas in the show is completely unrecognizable in contrast to the Vegas of the novel. And the more that I think about it, the more that bothers me. And Colin has mentioned that the makeup was great. I'm guessing you're talking about the makeup on Trashcan Man. And yes, I thought that looked the shit. It was a really good appearance. Ezra Miller was almost unrecognizable. And I thought that portion was definitely solid, absolutely Trashcan Man. And so I thought that part of the look was at least on the money, and it worked for me pretty well. So in Vegas, they send some guys to take out the second spy, as Dana was killed in the previous episode. And it's Judge Ferris. And of course, she gets killed just like he did in the novel. And Bobby Terry, the guy who was going to take him out, gets brought to Flag with the body bag of the judge. And this worked pretty closely to what I remember of the novel scene when they report on the fact that the judge was killed. And Flag, of course, goes fucking nuts, and he rips Terry apart. And that was really good. Now, where they again departed rather significantly, Stephanie Littlepage, good to see you. Thanks for popping in. Another significant departure from the novel story is Flag figures out who the third spy is because of a comment made by his basically Maitre D' of the Inferno Casino, where he's camped out. Instead of Caesar's, by the way. They're at the Inferno Casino, which is like a mile and a half down the strip from Caesars. I mean, I guess you make that change because of trying to call it Hell on Earth or what have you. But Caesars was the original base of Flag. But they're in the Inferno, and his maitre d' wants to call up Tom Cullen to help clean up the mess that Flag made in the elevator. And and she says, yeah, the big guy, Moon, he's best damn janitor I've ever seen. And Flag connects the dots because he keeps getting visions of the moon when he's trying to spot the third spy, which of course is a big departure from the novel. Flag never figures out who the hell he is. Tom simply sees the full moon and starts heading back to Boulder like he was supposed to. Tom was warned by Dana in the previous episode to run. He has somebody point out to him what run means on something else. And so he's getting ready to bug out of there. Right as Flag's coming to look for him, he hides in a truck of bodies from the gladiator matches. Again, not something that happened in Vegas in the novel at all. He just bugged out of there when he was supposed to bug out, and started making his trip home, where he eventually meets up with Stu, who falls on the way to Vegas. And so it's the changes that they're making there are, The Stand is not standing up to the book at all, Colin. I expect changes in any adaptation. You can't faithfully bring everything in. You're going to have to skip over some things, but you don't have to dramatically change the events. And the complete twisting of the events from what we saw in the novel to making them almost unrecognizable in this adaptation. I mean, it's almost not even an adaptation, or certainly not a faithful one. It's sort of loosely based on Stephen King's The Stand at this point. And that's frustrating. Because, this version isn't holding up to the previous miniseries. And yes, Ratwoman. That was Ratwoman? Oh, Jesus Christ. I didn't even recognize that. You know what I mean? Because, yes, I remember that from the novel, but I did not put two and two together that that's who that was. Again, such a wide departure from what we read and even what we experienced in the 94 miniseries as to make the character not even knowable. But Tom's going to get out of there, so that's good. He's supposed to get out of there. Although the way that he pulled it off in the novel, I thought was much better than how they're bringing it to us here, because it wasn't a harrowing escape. He did his job exactly like Nick knew that he would, which was in the novel, he just flew under the radar completely, and you barely noticed him, even though Julie Lawry did spot him. And I was something I didn't catch until I thought about it in between episodes was that, she definitely had a very bad case of meth mouth. And Brad Dourif's daughter. Okay. Now, it was something I realized in between episodes that didn't get into me in my review on last week's episode was they made Julie Lawry Lloyd Heinried's girlfriend in the show, when of course it was Dana Jurgens that he was sleeping with in the book. That was some of the way that she got close to the power in Vegas, of course, was hooking up with Heinried, who is so far apart from the character in the novel that it's again unrecognizable. The Lloyd in the book was almost a tragic character, because his consistent story was basically that he kept falling in with the wrong guys to an extent, whether it was Polk in the beginning when they pokerized the guy at the mini mart, or whether it was with Flag, who appointed him as his chief administrator there in Vegas as the right-hand man. He always fell in with the wrong guy. And even though Flag made him much smarter and more effective and a better man, he sure as hell was not Ruby Rod, which is the best comparison. I think one of the commenters on the video review from last week made that comparison. I think it was dead on. Lloyd should not be Chris Tucker. He should be a cold and calculating type of guy. And it's just not what we're getting here at all. And the more I see this Lloyd, the more I hate the portrayal. I don't blame the actor for this because I'm sure he's portraying the character exactly how the directors, the show writer, and the showrunner wanted him to. And for the character they're asking him to portray, he's fine. It's just not Lloyd. But going back to Trashcan Man, as much as I do not like Ezra Miller, I was not displeased with how they portrayed Trashy because that was pretty close. Now, where they took yet again a major departure from the story in the book is Trashy blew some shit up in Vegas that he wasn't supposed to blow up, and to try to get back into Flag's good graces, he goes off to the military base in the desert to retrieve the nuke. And in the episode today, Flag sent him out to get the nuke intentionally. And that's to me an abuse of the character of Trashy. And I don't like that change whatsoever. And then, yeah, Jamie Sheridan's version of Randall Flagg, I also liked that. I don't disagree. I'm not upset with Skarsgård's portrayal. It's definitely a different take than what we saw with Sheridan, but I thought it worked. I'm happy with Skarsgård's portrayal. It's not like an epic performance or anything like that, but it works for me. So yes, that's the Stand episode 6, The Vigil. There's a lot of shit going on in Boulder that you don't care about because they didn't make you care about it. And there's a lot of stuff going on in Vegas that doesn't make a hell of a lot of sense because they've twisted the story so far from its roots that the pieces just don't click together like they ought to. So, my 5 out of 10 on this episode is probably generous. All right. Hey, if you've made it this far, please remember to press like on the video. Comment down below. We've had some really great conversations on these reviews, and I hope to keep it going. If you watch this on the replay, Jim Bob, I'm really looking forward to seeing your opinion on this episode. You've been an amazing commenter on these reviews, and I feel like I remember and learn stuff about this book every time you point something out. So I love seeing your comments, and I sure hope that you're still around to catch this one. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please do consider doing so. We'll continue to cover The Stand through the end of this horrid miniseries adaptation, as well as working with one of the most amazing shows on television, The Expanse. And we're going to be expanding coverage into WandaVision, as well as our weekly Howlin' About Entertainment show. Thank you so much for stopping by this video or the live stream, and we'll talk to you later.